Welcome back. Welcome back to a new episode. Sorry, this week I was outside and I couldn't do it, but here we are once again. This time in the debate room we're going to be talking about F1, and more specifically, I want one subject that Stefano Domenicali mentioned in a podcast, well, whatever. I think it was when he was visiting MotoGP in Portugal. And let me try to make this funny, okay? I am a supporter of a cancellation of free practice sessions, which are a great use to the engineer, but the public doesn't like. Sorry for my Italian accent, maybe it's not perfect, but just to try to sound like him. Anyway, so, the CEO of F1, the guy who I think is related to marketing or something like this. Anyway, he's the CEO now, right? The CEO of F1, the guy who's supposed to be leading F1 into a better thing, is thinking, and I'm gonna guess he's more than thinking, to remove the free practice from the Grand Prix. Right? Here you have a schedule from last year, but anyway, it can be applied more or less to every single year. Every weekend, you will have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's 3 days for F1. And I think on most of the history, it has been like this all the time, right? So you have Friday for free practice 1 and free practice 2. Free practices, more or less, before I think it used to be 1 hour and 1 hour, then they changed it to 1 hour and a half, something like this. Anyway, it's 1 hour and a half of teams and drivers trying to know the track and try to use the best setup for the weekend, right? Each car, each driver trying to see if they need more wing, less wing, more understeer, less understeer, and so on. Like the height of the ride, the brakes, the pressure of the brakes, where to use these braking partition, right, here and there, electronics, I don't know, I mean, fuel configuration for race and qualifying. There's so many things that the teams need to test during these 3 hours, let's say, right? One and the other one, 3 hours. And then you have another one, which is on Saturday, free practice, which is 1 hour. And then you have the qualifying, right? Which is more or less more than 1 hour, but of course it depends on if you can make it to the next qualifying rounds, right? There's 3 qualifying rounds, Q1, Q3, anywhere, from Q1 to Q3. And sometimes you have the sprint race, which is the worst thing F1 has ever invented. And then of course you have the Sunday race. So, F1 I think it was after the crisis, maybe, of the late 2000s, right? Decided to shorten the pre-season testing of the F1, right? I think it was with Eccleston. I don't know who was in charge of those kind of decisions before, but anyway, they decided to shorten the pre-season testing. Before, in the 90s, I think, all the teams were free to test whatever the hell they wanted in the car as much as they wanted. Like Ferrari had Fiorano, their own track, maybe Williams would test in Silverstone, I don't know. Then they would gather in Barcelona or Jerez or wherever, right? And they would do the testing as much as they wanted. But of course, then suddenly, even with sponsors and everything, the cost of having an F1 team raised too much. So they standardized it, let's say, right? They made it, 2 weeks of testing in F1. It would be from Monday to Friday in, Barcelona, and then Monday to Friday in Jerez, right? Let's say 10 days of testing. And then, since Liberty came, they decided to make it even shorter, and even shorter, and even shorter, until it's only 3 days. 3 days to test a new car. Well, this year they are evolutions of next year, but imagine Aston Martin. They made so many changes that they only had 3 days to test if the car is right or not. Williams, for example, which was the last team by far last year, which they made some progress, but still, they need time on the track to test the parts, right? All of that is gone, and I think it was George Russell, the one who was complaining about the testing, right? That says that imagine that somebody has to go to space and they only have 3 days to learn everything, to try to go to space, how the rocket works, what is the safety measures, emergency things, or I don't know how many procedures. Can you manage a shuttle, space shuttle, with only 3 days of training? I don't think so. Similar to F1. Or imagine if a football team gets to pre-season and they only have 3 days to put all the football players fit and ready for match. Right? It's difficult. So that is the pre-season testing. And now, Domenicali is talking about the free practice. The free practice, which, as I mentioned before, all the engineers and drivers use to set up the car for the weekend, right? For the race. They need to make the car with the driver as fast as possible, right? If you remove those 3 hours, you only have 1 hour on Saturday to go to track and test everything. Imagine if the weather of the weekend is sketchy, let's say. Raining, not raining, sunny, not sunny. One day you have 35 degrees and then on Sunday you have 20 degrees. Temperature changes a lot in F1, by the way, right? So if you remove those 3 hours of testing on the Friday, or whatever, not testing, I mean, it's free practice, right? It's setting up the car. You're setting up the car, you're trying things. You imagine you are bringing new evolutions to the car. You need to test those evolutions. You need to compare. You need to have a benchmark of where you are and where you were going in the same Grand Prix. It doesn't matter, like every racetrack is different. How can you remove this from the teams? The guy says that the public, the audience doesn't like to watch free practice 1 and 2. I like it. I am an audience. I have been watching F1 since the 90s. I like it. I like to see the cars on the track. If I was in the racetrack, I would love to see just the F1 cars passing by. I mean, I don't know what they are doing. Nobody does. Only the teams do. Not even the other teams know what the other teams are doing. But people like to watch the F1 cars on track. They just like to see cars on the track. If you're pushing or not, it's another thing. Doesn't matter. But if it's, I would change something from the free practice. I would maybe make it something different, like how to say, like make one of the free practices for race stints. Why? So I can force the teams to stay on track longer time, so people can see cars on track, right? Imagine that you have to force the teams to make stints of 20 laps, no? A team wants to see where does the soft tire go in the beginning. They will put all the fuel in the car, and they will put a soft tire, and they will go to track and start lapping and lapping and lapping. And you will have those cars on TV. It's like a race, but it's not a race. Just cars trying to go for a long stint to see how long does the soft tire last. That's just one example. I mean, I don't know. You see, for example, Domenicali was in the MotoGP thing, right? I think he went there for the sprint race. Anyway, imagine that you do like MotoGP. They have free practice 1, 2, 3, and before they used to have 4. Now they will have the sprint race. But anyway, on one of those free practices, all the teams will be trying like the race setup, which you would have so many MotoGP bikes on the track, lapping around, right? Lapping around and lapping around and lapping around, trying to see what was the best setup for the race. And usually this would be like the second practice or the fourth practice. Why? Because you need to try the track conditions as close as possible to what the Sunday conditions of the race will be, right? Imagine that you can force the F1 teams to do that. Like you have one free practice. Let's say like what they do now with the free practice 3, right? They use it to try the qualifying setups, more or less. At the end of the last 10 minutes, all the teams like unload the car and kind of go for it to see who's gonna be more or less in the front, right? To see how the car is going to behave at full power, more or less. More or less, I say, because what happens in free practice 3 and the qualifying can be different. Not all the teams unleash the beast. So imagine if you have like free practice 2 on Friday to do that. Maybe free practice 1 to try to see how the car is working, free practice 2 to try race stints, which is how it should be done, right? And I'm gonna guess this is how more or less teams do it, by the way. Free practice 3 for the qualifying, and then you have the qualifying. Honestly, I would remove the sprint race. The sprint race in F1 doesn't make any sense, and I think I will make another episode about the sprint race, because this doesn't make any sense. It's a shitty format. I'm sorry. Cars don't overtake each other. They are afraid to damage the car for Sunday, and it's not a qualifying. It's not a race. It's crap. People don't like it. They don't overtake. They don't take risks. I think the format should be something similar to MotoGP, but anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the free practice here. Removing the free practice is giving less information to the teams and drivers, and you're making it more chaotic, let's say, right? You are making teams rely much more on what a computer says, and we have seen so many examples in the recent history on how you design a car on a computer and then you bring it to the track and it doesn't work. So many examples. I think it was one of the biggest examples is I think it was Marussia, or I don't know how it was called, one of those Virgin Racing, I think it was. They relied a lot in CAD and all these three-dimensional wind tunnel and computer fluid dynamic analysis and blah 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 blah. Some new edge technologies. Instead of using the wind tunnel, which was very expensive, they made everything in the computer. They brought the car to the track and it didn't work. It was one of the last and the team disappeared, right? This is just one example on how you cannot rely everything in a computer, and you need time on track. You need time on track. I think it's like one of the most important things for an F1 team. They need to put the car on track to see how the car works. If you bring updates, you need to put the old parts with the new parts in the same track at the same time in the same conditions to see how the car responds. If you remove all that from the F1 weekends, it's not F1 anymore. It's not a competition. It's not a competition. F1 should be a competition of the teams and drivers trying to show who is the fastest, right? They already removed that equation, or that part from the equation, when they made F1 what they call it eco, right? Saving, fuel management, tire management, comparing to us how it used to be with the drivers going full blast as fast as they can all the race, right? Now they don't go full blast. They need to save fuel. They need to make it efficient. More or less. I mean, I say more or less because they still push at some points, right? You will try to make the car maybe lighter at the beginning of the race, so you have a lighter car. Let's not forget that every car, at every lap, there will be some like extra kg, right, that they will be burning, comparing to how it should be at the end of the race, right? I think they have a maximum of 100 kg for all the race. Maybe they will put like 90 kg. And they will fuel manage during the race, so it can save some weight, because 1 kilogram can cost like maybe 0.1 seconds per lap, something like this. I don't know. This is how they do it, by the way. But anyway, I forgot what I was saying. But yeah, the competition should be like a going full blast, right? To see who's the best, which team gathered the best thing, right? Engineers, drivers, the best factory, I don't know, everything best to try to make the fastest car and try to win the championship. This is what F1 should be. This is how F1 started, basically, right? When it was in the 1950s, and I think it was Alberto Ascari, I think it was Alberto Ascari, the first world champion, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, it was about who could make the best car and who could drive it faster. That is the soul of F1. Right? It's not about the drivers, it's about the cars, it's about the whole thing, it's about the team. It's a team sport. It's not a driver sport. I know people focus a lot on the drivers, but it's not a driver sport. It's a team sport to see who can put the best engineers with the best mechanics, with the best sponsors, and all these things with the best driver and go to the race with the best strategists or whatever you want to call it and make the best race possible. The fastest, who can get to the finish line first. They already killed that with the fuel managing and tire management and all these things. They are trying to gain attention of the manufacturers, changing the engine rules, right? We all loved those V10 engines that then changed to V8 because manufacturers did not manufacture V10 engines for street cars, right? So no engine manufacturer I'm talking about, wanted to be in F1. They changed to V8, but then V8 also was not attractive anymore to engine manufacturers because there's so many restrictions in the street cars. So they changed it to V10 hybrid, right? It was not an engine anymore. It was a power unit with KERS and how is this brake bypass? How is it? Anyway, the thing that gets energy from the heat that you generate from the brakes, something like this. So you can get an extra boost. I mean, so more manufacturers come in. Honda came in back, right? Now you have this new carbon zero policy that is trying to bring Audi and Porsche. We will see if Porsche is coming in the end or not. And maybe Honda wants to stay. Ford is coming. But is this F1? Are they really going as fast as they can? Because I only see them going as fast as they can in the qualifying. Not even in the sprint race, by the way. I don't see them going full blast in the sprint race. So you not only don't see drivers pushing as hell in the race, you have the DRS to make it easier because, let's face it, it was not the best thing to overtake. F1 is not an overtaking sport. You remove the pit stops to try to mess the grid a little bit, everybody going with different strategies. That could help to try to make like maybe the second fastest car overtake the fastest car with a different strategy. I don't know. You remove that as well from the equation. And now they want to remove the free practice so teams do not have time to check new stuff. If a new team comes to F1 and they don't have the free practice, how are they going to learn how the sport works, right? If Andretti or now there is another team that they call it the equal team, equal gender team, racing team or whatever it is, 50-50%. I don't think they can have a woman driver because no woman driver so far is going to get the super license because they can't. So far, I'm saying. Maybe in the future there is, and kudos, hats off to that girl. But right now there is none. They want to have 50-50 for the engineers and all these things, which I honestly don't care. As long as they can make an F1 competent team that can be fighting for stuff, then right? You have Andretti, you have this Asia Panther team or whatever it's called that is from France or French owned. But anyway, Andretti, let's say, right? Andretti comes to the competition. How are they going to learn how F1 works? Because they have teams in IndyCar, of course, but it's not the same thing. It's a completely different thing. How are they going to learn how the sport works? Can they design a whole car by themselves? If they put that car on track, how do they know if it works? It will take so many years and so many burned money to make that team work if they do not have at least a free practice, right? Free practice 1 and 2. This is my impression, at least. Yes, of course you want to see what you see in the screen now, right? Fighting, if you see any fighting, because at least this year there is no fight. You had in Jeddah Leclerc and Verstappen overtaking other cars because they were penalized, right? One for failure, one for changing some ECU or something like this. But if not, there was no fight. Alonso overtook Perez in the start, Perez took the position back, and he left. Alonso didn't have any attacks from Russell. There was one lap, I think, attacked, but then nothing. And then if Verstappen doesn't overtake everybody, the race was going to be in a single line. I don't want to see that. Domenicali, here, another opinion. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see people racing cars in a single line, right? I want to see a car, I don't know, this Williams, for example. I want to see a car driving around. If I am in the racetrack, at least, I want to see cars driving around. I want to see a car passing. And on the weekend, let's not forget, F1 is not the only sport that will be in the racetrack. Usually you will have F2, F3, and you have, I think, Porsche series or something like this. So you will have other competitions to watch. But if I go to the racetrack, I want to see F1 cars passing by. If I don't go to the racetrack and I'm at home, I want to see a free practice and I want to see what is happening during the free practice, right? This car, oh, look at this part, is doing I don't know what. Or you will have the TV talking about things that they heard or things that happened in the last Grand Prix, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I want to see cars on track. I don't care if they're racing. If you want to make it racing, make it like F2, make 2 races, right? You go on Friday, you make some free practice, and you make the qualifying, and then on Saturday, you have the sprint race, and on Sunday, you have the main race. Something like this. But in F2, all the cars are the same. But the F1, even though they are trying, they are not, right? I don't know. For me, and I am maybe more classic, I don't know. I prefer to have this free practice. I prefer to see the teams at their full potential. Maybe even I would add another free practice. I don't know. So they could try more stuff. This is just an opinion, once again. I want to see teams at their best potential. I want to see drivers comfortable with the setup. I want to see teams knowing how to extract the full speed of the car with the driver. With each driver, not just one driver, right? Imagine if Perez can actually fight Max Verstappen because he feels comfortable with the car. Because in Jeddah, usually Perez goes, well, but Australia, do you really think that Perez is going to fight Verstappen if Verstappen doesn't have any problems? Look at what happened in Bahrain. How far was Perez from Verstappen? The car is done for Verstappen's like. Imagine if Perez can actually understand how the car works for the weekend and can fight Verstappen. If he can, I don't know. But at least he's not going to be 20 seconds behind, right? Imagine that. I don't know. This is just my own modest opinion. The rookies, right? Piastri in the McLaren. If you remove the free practice, how are the rookies coming into F1 going to learn how stuff works, how the team works, how the car works? You need free practice. You need actually also the pre-season testing, but they are trying to remove that as well. I'm not gonna say to make it free, like as much as you want, but bring back those 2 weeks of pre-season testing. Now that all the teams are making money, they can afford it. I don't know, just an opinion. Let me know what you think. If you agree with Domenicali and you want to see free practice removed, or you actually are more like me, that I like to sit on Fridays to watch the F1 practice. Maybe I'm doing other stuff in the computer, but at least on the TV I will have the free practice there, just to see the cars going by. Maybe just listen what they are saying, curiosities, whatever. I don't know. That's just me. Let me know what you think, and see you on another episode. This weekend we have Australian Grand Prix, so on Friday I will be doing the same episode as usual, and see you in another episode.